Hello, I'm Anne Gravels and welcome to video 3 of 5 based on the Teaching, Learning and Assessment cycle. This covers the aspect of facilitating learning, and you can find more details in chapter 5 of the textbooks. Facilitating learning is all about you facilitating the process of your learners actually learning something regarding your subject. So you've got to think about aspects such as your learners and what their needs are and how they actually learn so that you can gear the activities you use during your sessions to meet their needs. For example, if you've got a group of learners that are perhaps mainly kinesthetic, i.e. they're quite practical, then you wouldn't want to give them a lot of theory to study. So it's all about planning what you will actually do. And the best way of starting that is with an induction. The first time you meet your learners, give them lots of information about the actual program or qualification, what the assessment requirements are. For example, will they be assessed by assignment, test or an exam? Information about the organisation, the opening times, where facilities are such as catering or parking, toilets, everybody needs to know this information, and any other information that can be used to support the learner. For example, if there are particular people they can go to if they've got any problems or concerns. So the induction is really the first part when you meet your learners, giving them all this information. But you don't want to get too carried away by giving them too much in the beginning. You also need to introduce yourself, tell your learners just a little bit about you, not too much because I feel it's important to remain professional and not become too friendly. But you can also use an icebreaker with your learners. I think it's really important for your learners to feel comfortable and confident enough to ask questions. And if everybody's a stranger when they first meet you for the first time, to help them relax, carry out an icebreaker. It's a way of just getting them to know each other and to know you. And it can simply be a fun, light-hearted activity. It could be something practical or something quite simple, whereby you sit your learners in pairs and they have a chat to each other and then they introduce each other. A lot of learners are often apprehensive about introducing themselves and talking about themselves in front of the group, whereas if the person sitting next to them is introducing them, it makes it a lot more easier. And then when your students feel a little bit more comfortable and able to speak, you can go on to setting what we call the ground rules. Now, these are quite important, and you should establish them at the beginning of the course so that everybody knows where they stand. And ground rules can often be broken down into what is negotiable or what is non-negotiable. Negotiable are things like the timings of breaks or whether everybody will switch off their mobile device, whereas non-negotiable are usually related to aspects such as health and safety or timekeeping. There are lots of different approaches that you can use as a teacher or a trainer. For example, you can talk, you can hold discussions, you can carry out paired activities, group activities, role play. It's really about keeping your learners active and not passive, and varying the approaches that you use throughout your sessions. Ideally, it should be broken down into 3 sections: the beginning, the middle, and the end. At the beginning of your session, you should always introduce yourself if it's the first time you've met your learners, and perhaps carry out an icebreaker and ground rules. But if you're with an established group, then you should go straight into mentioning what the topic of the session is and the objectives that you expect your learners to achieve. Now, objectives are verbs. They are the words we use that can show you that learning has actually taken place. For example, to list or to explain, to describe or to demonstrate. These are all aspects your learners can actually do, which enable you, as their teacher or assessor, to see that they have actually learned something. And so when you're planning your session, make sure you're using realistic objectives at the level to suit your learners. Once you've introduced your aim and objectives, you can then check if there's any prior learning that the learners have or any knowledge and skills regarding the subject, and make sure you draw on those throughout the session. You can then go into the middle of the session where teaching and learning actually takes place, and this is where you're using all those different approaches that we mentioned. Keep your learners active, keep them engaged, keep them motivated. It can be easy for me to say that, but you need to find your own approach really with your own learners as to what works, and often that comes by experience. And then when you come to the end of the session, you should always recap your aim and objectives. And if you spare time, you can carry out a fun quiz in groups or ask each individual learner the one significant thing that they actually learnt from that session. You could finish with a fun activity similar to an icebreaker if you've got spare time. But I always feel you should stick to your start time and your end time. Sometimes learners might be a little late to the start of a lesson due to no reason of their own. So what you could actually incorporate is what we call a starter activity, which could be a quiz or a discussion at the beginning of the session before you actually get on to introducing the aim and objectives, so that if you have a learner that arrives a little late, they've only missed that discussion and nothing important regarding the session. So thank you for watching video 3 of 5. Hope to see you again in the next video.